What's going on, guys? It's New York Prepper here. In this video, I want to talk to you about the Russian Doomsday weapon known as Status-6. It's also called Poseidon or Canyon, but most people just call it Status-6. And what this weapon system is a autonomous nuclear-powered and nuclear-armed underwater drone. All right. It's basically an underwater missile. Okay, it's a giant torpedo that has a nuclear reactor on board that allows it to stay underwater for extremely long periods of time without any kind of refueling, just like a nuclear powered submarine. So, this nuclear powered torpedo can literally stay underwater for 20 years before having to surface. Okay, it can basically stay underwater indefinitely, and it has no people on board. It's 100% autonomous. It's a drone, and what's really scary about it is that it can carry 100 megaton nuclear warhead. Okay, and Russian President Vladimir Putin announced that it was built in March of 2018, and it's presumed that it's already in deployment, and it could be swimming in a water somewhere close to you. It could be somewhere just off the shore in your favorite beach. All right, so I want to go more into details of what this weapon is and then go into the ways that you can protect yourself. And I'm going to go into more detail of how to protect yourself from fallout radiation and nuclear survival. But in this video, we're just going to talk about this doomsday weapon, the Russian doomsday weapon. And what's really scary about this weapon here is that it has a 100 megaton warhead. If you don't know how powerful that is, that's probably 10 times more powerful than the most powerful nuclear bomb ever developed by the United States, which was Castle Bravo. Okay. Castle Bravo was 15 megatons, and this is 100 megatons. Okay. It's also twice as powerful as the most powerful nuclear bomb that was ever tested, which was the Tsar bomb. The Tsar bomb was 50 megatons, and it was so powerful that it caused windows to shatter up to 500 miles away from the detonation point. Okay, in Russia, they tested this huge bomb in 1952, I believe, in northern Russia, and the bomb was so powerful that it caused windows to shatter 500 miles away. Okay, that's how powerful it is. And so this bomb on the Status-6 is twice as powerful as the Tsar bomb. Okay, so think about that for a minute. And what you're looking at here is a simulation of the Status-6 being detonated over New York City. And what you can see here, the big thing that stands out is the fallout cloud. Okay, and the fallout cloud will be dependent on the prevailing winds when the bomb goes off. So depending on the time of the year and what the winds are at the time that the bomb goes off, the fallout could go anywhere. But you could see how far the fallout spreads. I mean, you have a bomb that goes off in New York City, and the fallout is reaching the Gulf Coast of Alabama. All right, that's, I don't know, 1,000 miles away. So depending on which direction the winds are blowing, there's really no place that you're really safe from the fallout. Okay, even if you're in Iowa, okay, in the middle of the US, the fallout could still potentially reach you from a massive bomb like this. All right, so you need to learn how to protect yourself from fallout. That's extremely important. But another thing about this weapon too that's very concerning is that it's so powerful that you can get third-degree burns up to 50 miles away from the detonation point. Okay, so you can see this orange ring here, or golden ring, around the detonation point, and that golden ring represents the area where if you're inside of that ring, you're going to get third-degree burns. Okay, and that's up to 50 miles from the detonation point. That's how powerful these bombs are. Okay, so you really have to be far, far away to not get injured by this type of a weapon. And furthermore, inside of the golden ring, you can see this purple or blue color ring inside, and that represents the area where there's 100% fatalities expected and total destruction of commercial buildings. Okay, this is a 20 psi overpressure, and 20 psi overpressure is enough to kill you. All right, so this bluish ring here, which extends 10 to 20 miles from the detonation point, everything would be wiped out completely. And estimated fatalities would be up to 8 million people and 4 million people seriously injured. And then you have to think about the fallout radiation, which would kill millions more, because most Americans are not prepared to deal with fallout, okay? And, protecting yourself from fallout is not hard to do, but you have to plan for it, and you need to understand the basic principles. And my goal will be to do a video on how to protect yourself from fallout, okay? And I'm going to do that soon. And I've done a whole video on nuclear survival skills. I'm going to attach a link to my nuclear survival skills series that I did like 3 years ago. And I talk about different things to do to protect yourself. But I'm going to do another video on how to make improvised shelters and basic concepts of nuclear survival, okay? Here's another graph or a picture of what the explosion would look like over New York City. And you can see this mushroom cloud is so massive that it would rise 53 kilometers in the sky. Okay, that's 53 kilometers is about 35 or 30 miles. Okay, that would reach up into space. All right, and look at how big this cloud would be. It would reach all the way over all of Long Island and all the way into Pennsylvania. That's how massive this fallout cloud would be. All right, so the fallout radiation from this explosion would be devastating. It would also be a surface burst too, and surface bursts are the worst for radiation because the explosion is closer to the ground, where more things are going to get vaporized and turned into ash, and then that ash will become radioactive and fall from the sky downwind hundreds of miles away. So, this would have a extremely bad fallout from this Status-6. So the power plant for this autonomous drone, the Status-6, it has a gas-cooled nuclear reactor. It also has stealth technology that allows it to elude acoustic tracking devices. It has a special type of engine or propeller that runs very quietly, okay? So the propeller is extremely quiet and the engine is extremely quiet, which will help it to hide from any kind of acoustics tracking, okay? It can travel up to 100 knots, speed 100 knots per hour, which is very fast, okay? And so it's a very fast-moving drone, but it can also slow itself down to extremely slow speeds in order to evade any kind of countermeasures or tracking systems, okay? So it can go pretty fast, but it can also slow down to, go stealthy once it gets closer to the shoreline where it would detonate. And so the basic specs here is that it can reach a depth of 3,300 feet, okay? That's extremely deep. It can go pretty deep in the ocean, which will help it to evade any kind of detection, okay? So this thing is just basically the perfect weapon. This thing could be used in any major city like New York City, but I think a bigger target and a more likely target would be the Norfolk Naval Base in Virginia, where we have all of our aircraft carriers. If they were to hit that with this Status-6, that would pretty much decapitate our whole Navy. Another thing that they could also do is they could go after our submarine launched ballistic missiles in Bangor, Washington, okay, which is right outside of Seattle. And Bangor, Washington is where we keep all of our or most of our submarine launched ballistic missile stockpile. All right, we have thousands of Trident missiles stored in Bangor, and we also have a few Ohio class subs over there, which are part of the nuclear triad. So they would probably try to go after one of those two areas. They could also go after some of the other bases in California as well. So the bottom line is, if you live near a military base like Norfolk or Bangor, you need to really take serious precautions in case they ever use this weapon against the United States, okay? And anybody that lives in the United States, doesn't matter where you are, you should have some type of knowledge of how to survive a nuclear fallout scenario, okay? You don't have to build a deliberate shelter in your basement, although that's ideal. You can build a permanent shelter in your basement out of 4x8x16 solid concrete blocks. And one layer of those blocks is enough to reduce radiation by a dramatic amount, to the point where it's safe to be behind that. And in the 1950s and in the Cold War, the US government put out instructions for citizens on how to make a fallout shelter in your basement. And it involved using 4x8x16 solid concrete blocks and basically building another room in your basement that would protect you from fallout. It wouldn't even look like a fallout shelter. It would just look like another room inside of your basement. And you could potentially dress it up so it doesn't look like a shelter. You could put, sheetrock over it and wallpaper, and it'll just look like another room, but it'll be made out of solid concrete, and that will protect you from fallout. All right. But if you can't make a permanent shelter, or you don't want to for whatever reason, you have to know how to make a hasty fallout shelter. And I'll do a video on that. You also need to know about radiation protection factors, and you have to know about halving thicknesses of different materials like dirt, sand, water, wood, all right, concrete, bricks. You need to know what the halving thicknesses are of those materials, or you need to have a reference guide somewhere that you can use. And what a halving thicknesses means is that one halving thickness is the amount of material that you need to reduce the radiation by 50% or cut it in half. Okay. And multiple halving thicknesses will increase your protection factor. So the more halving thicknesses you have, the higher your protection factor is. Okay. And there's a certain minimum amount of halving thicknesses that you should have to really be safe from radiation. Okay. Fallout radiation is easy to survive. A lot of people think it's difficult to survive, and it's not. You just have to know some basic concepts, like halving thicknesses, protection factors. You also need to know the time and distance, and how it affects radiation. Okay, so radiation breaks down over time, and it also will break down over distance. Okay, so the further away you are from a source of radiation, the radiation will be much less, based on the inverse square of the distance, which is known as the inverse square law. So you want to know the inverse square law. You also want to know the 7-10 rule. Okay, the 7-10 rule means that for every factor of 7 in time, the radiation is going to be reduced by a factor of 10. Okay, so let's say a bomb goes off right now. Within 7 hours, the radiation is going to be 10 times less, okay? And within 49 hours or 2 days, which is 7 times 7, another factor of 7, okay, after 49 hours or 2 days, you're going to have 100 times less radiation, okay? So you can see that if you can survive even just the first 2 days of a radiation situation like fallout, even just surviving the first 2 days will give you a huge, increase your survival chances tremendously. Now, multiply that by a couple of days, or, if you can survive 1 to 2 weeks inside of a shelter, by the time that 1 or 2 weeks is up, and you go outside, the radiation is going to be over 1,000 times less, and it'll be pretty safe to be walking around outside. So that's why having a decent fallout shelter is important. Okay, if you can't make one permanently, you should know how to make one in a hasty fashion. Okay, which I'll do that in a different video. But I mean, a hasty fallout shelter just involves, piling up as much dense material around you into a sort of like a shelter, a wall, okay, and taking dirt and piling dirt around the windows of your home and getting into the basement. Okay, that's what you're going to want to do, and I'll do a separate video on that. But so you want to know the inverse square law, the rule, the 710 rule. You want to know halving thicknesses and protection factors. Those are very important concepts that you have to know. All right. And you should print out reference cards too. And I'll do a video on how to make hasty shelters. But, you're not going to be safe from the fallout of this weapon, okay, no matter where you are in the United States. And here's what the weapon looks like. You can see it looks like a giant torpedo, okay? It's about as long as a bus. And here's another picture of the diameter of the Poseidon, the Status-6. You can see it's quite thick, okay? It's about 2 meters thick, so it's a large weapon, okay? And here's a picture of the propeller, okay? And this is supposed to be a stealthy propeller. All right, guys, so this weapon here can stay underwater indefinitely. It has a nuclear-powered engine. It can carry a 100 megaton warhead on it, which is enough to basically wipe out anything within a 30-mile radius of the flashpoint and deposit fallout up to 1,000 miles away. It can give you third-degree burns 50 miles away from the detonation point. It's an absolutely powerful weapon. It's the most powerful weapon probably ever deployed. And there was even talk of them putting a 200 megaton warhead on there, which would basically wipe out, an entire country. Okay, but it uses stealthy technology. It can stay underwater long periods of time. This is just a nightmare weapon. Okay, it can go down to 3,000 feet, and it's totally autonomous. They can steer it wherever they want and attack any area that they want undetected. So I wanted to just raise attention, raise awareness to this weapon system, and raise awareness of understanding nuclear survival skills and start reading books, guys. Okay, there's a lot of good books on nuclear survival. You just have to know a couple of things. Okay, it's not that complicated. And you want to also get yourself some basic prepping items to survive a nuclear attack, like a radiation dosimeter is very important, so you can monitor your personal radiation dose that you're receiving over time. Okay, and also you can use the dosimeter to measure the radiation levels outside. So this way you can see if it's safe to leave your shelter and go outside. Okay, so a dosimeter is essential for nuclear survival. If you're every prepper should have a dosimeter. Okay, you should also have potassium iodide, which protects your thyroid. What it does is your thyroid hoards iodine, okay, because iodine is very difficult to obtain in nature. It's a very scarce mineral. So anytime you have iodine in your body, your thyroid will hoard it, okay? And the problem with that is there's a radioactive version of iodine that gets released after a bomb goes off. And what happens is your body won't know the difference between the radioactive iodine and normal iodine. So it's going to hold that radioactive iodine in your thyroid, and your thyroid is going to die, and you're going to have have a thyroid replacement. Or you don't want to mess with your thyroid. Your thyroid is critical for your metabolism, so you don't want to have a thyroid that has cancer or something from radioactive iodine that got hoarded by your body. Okay, so potassium iodide will prevent that, because potassium iodide is a non-radioactive form of iodine. And what you do is if a nuclear bomb goes off, you take the potassium iodide immediately, so your body will saturate the thyroid with the potassium iodide. So even if there's radioactive iodine in the air, your body won't hoard it in the thyroid because the thyroid will already be saturated with non-radioactive iodine, okay? And thus it'll protect your thyroid, all right? So potassium iodide, radiation dosimeter, those are two very basic and simple things that every prepper should have to protect yourself, okay, from a nuclear attack. And then you want to consider building a fallout shelter in your basement, okay? You want to do it in your basement. You don't want to do it on a ground level because a basement will protect from radiation because of the dirt and the concrete walls. That'll provide some more protection, and even just being in your basement without any shelter around you will reduce radiation substantially. But then if you build a shelter in your basement, it'll really reduce the radiation for quite a bit. Okay, so you want to consider doing that. You also want to consider learning how to build hasty shelters, which I'm going to do a video on. And then you obviously want to arm yourself with knowledge of protecting yourself from fallout. You want to know about the inverse square law, distance, time, and shielding, the 7-10 rule, halving thicknesses, protection factors. You need to understand these basic concepts, okay? You also want to understand how nuclear weapons work, and you want to know the main threats from a nuclear weapon. There's 3 major threats. You have thermal radiation, which is heat. You have blast wave or overpressure, and then you have nuclear radiation, okay? So those are the big 3 things you want to protect yourself from: heat, blast, and radiation, okay? So those are other things that you need to read about and learn how to protect yourself from. You never want to look at a nuclear bomb when it goes off because it can burn your retina. If a nuclear bomb goes off and you're pretty close to it, you want to immediately find shelter where you can hide behind something and put some kind of solid object between you and the flash point, because the blast wave is going to be coming towards you within a matter of 30 seconds max, okay? It could even be at your location within a 5 or 10 seconds if you're within a 5-mile distance from the flash point. So you want to find something solid that you can hide behind, because when that blast wave comes through, if it hits you, it's going to rupture your lung. It could, kill you. So if you need to find a wall or a ditch, like a drainage ditch or a solid wall, is what you want to do. You want to get away from windows, just like they said in the movies back in the day, duck and cover. Okay, you want to duck and cover and get away from windows. The blast wave will carry debris into the air. It'll be basically like a tornado. So there could be objects that are flying through the blast wave, and if you're out in the open or if you're in front of a window, you could get impaled by different objects. Okay, so that's why you want to get behind something solid, and you don't want to be out in the open because the blast wave is going to be traveling at hundreds of miles per hour, and it's going to be picking up debris and carrying it and turning that debris into missiles, basically, okay? And then thermal radiation is the heat, okay? And that's usually hard to get away from. If you're within a few miles, you're not going to really be able to protect yourself from that, okay? But thermal radiation is another one. The best thing to do to protect yourself from thermal radiation is to get indoors. Okay, you don't want to be outside. You want to have some kind of solid structures around you, whether it's walls, whether it's you're in a basement. The basement of a solid building is the best place to be when a bomb goes off like that, okay? And then fallout radiation is the last one, which we talked about. All right, so that's pretty much it for this video, guys. Thanks for watching. I'll be doing more videos on nuclear survival, but this is a very serious weapon, and I believe that Russia is going to be developing other nuclear weapons in the future. They're building up their arsenal, and we know that President Biden is going to be extending that START treaty another 5 years, which is going to give Russia another 5 years of a window of opportunity for another 5 years to build up their nukes and increase their nuclear weapons arsenal levels, and also to build new nuclear weapons. Okay, so that's all I got for now. Thanks for watching. Take care. God bless. And don't forget the 3 Ps: prepare, practice, and persevere.